for right now. Now we have kind of like our HTML all done, some basic CSS done, and now we're ready for that, those animations. Okay, the first animation we're going to do is on hover animation. So do I still have that? No, I don't have that page open. Okay. So when we hover over this button, we want to change the CSS style. So we can, here, we can add envelope, the button inside the envelope, and we can put :hover. So this is just, again, another magic string you just get familiar with. Curly braces. And this, whatever we write here, will override whatever we wrote here when we hover over it. So one thing I've done is I make the background color pink when I hover over it. Pink. Well, just to show you this, when I hover over it, the color turns pink. Doesn't animate yet, but it just instantaneously picks pink. So let's just kind of change the style, what we want, and then we have this. Then we can add the nice animation. So I have background color pink. I want to make it bigger, so I'm going to transform. I'm going to scale it. So I'm going to scale it by 1.5, so make it 50% bigger. And I'm going to make the text color black. I think that's what I have. Those three things. And each of these three things we can actually animate or transition, is what it's called. So right now it's just kind of like jarring. It just goes boom, 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 right? It's too jarring. So let's add that animation. So it's really easy. All we have to do is write this is the most simplest animation we can do, transition. And we just describe how we want to transition from these styles to this style. So we want to do, well, we want to transition the transform property for 1 second, comma. We also want to transition the background color, 1 second. And we also want to, so I'm just writing each of these properties we want to transition. And then the color, I also want to transition for 1 second. So now after it's done saving, I hover over it. Now I see the color, everything transitions nicely. But when I hover out of it, it snaps back. Isn't so nice when it snaps back, but at least the size goes good and all that. But let's fix that snaps back. All you have to do is just do the same transition inside of here. So then it will transition the same three things back to their original values. So now if I go like this, hover out, see now it has this nice kind of fluid effect. Okay, and you guys don't have to pick pink 1.5 and color black. You guys can pick your own styles you want to override. I just picked those. You can also do like a rotate 56 degrees, for example, just kind of give you something spicy. And then you can make your button rotate. Whee! So anyway. And there's so many things you can do with transform. Again, you can go to the notes, go to the link, and you can see there's a whole slew of things you can do. You can rotate in 3D even. You can skew things. So you can have a lot of fun with that. All right, give you guys maybe 1 more minute to play with it. All right. I think we're ready. For our next section, unless anyone has last minute questions. The EA answered that question. All right. Perfect. Get to my notes. All right. So next is what we're going to do now is explore SVG animation. And what this will allow us to do is when we click the button, we're going to, did you see how the top opened up? Well, we're going to animate that open up effect now. Okay. And we're going to do that by changing the animation of the top. So I think I told you at the beginning with Xiaoming's question is we're going to use HTML this time to describe the animation instead of CSS. So it might seem weird to use HTML to describe animation, but it's there. So the first thing we need to do is change this to this so that we can put in instructions in HTML how to animate. Okay. So again, for sake of time, I'm just going to copy the animate element in the notes. I'll just copy that. And we'll just walk through it, what each of these things are. So the first thing is this ID, open top. I have to name this animate element so that in JavaScript, we can find this element and start the animation. I have to tell it what attribute here to animate. So I'm going to be animating the points. I'm going to be changing these points. How long the animation, 0.5 seconds. And what to do after the animation is done. So when the animation is done, I want the top to stay at the top. I don't want to do anything different. So just put fill freeze there. And when to start the animation. So indefinite means that it's going to wait indefinitely until some JavaScript starts the animation. So if I wanted to see the animation right away, I can just kind of like cut this out, don't have a begin, and then the animation, you can see the animation happen. And you can see how it freezed. Okay, I'm gonna put that back in. And we're gonna use JavaScript so that when you click this button, it will pop up. So to do that, we first have to find this, basically put this element into a JavaScript variable so we can manipulate it. So we're going to create a variable for this thing. I'm just going to copy the ID and use $ID to represent the variable name. It could be anything you want. And I'm going to use this document.query selector that we saw last class to find the element by its ID. So I'm just going to do this and then hashtag open top, just like hashtag up here in the envelope. I mean, when we're doing the CSS. And then now that variable is in this, has this element inside of it. So it has this begin element function that we can call. So the $sign represents, it's just me adding the $. You don't need it. All I'm doing is just so that the person reading my code understands that this variable contains an element inside of it. So I'm going to hit click again, and then the animation happens. Yep. So if I can delete the $signs, and the same animation will happen. So the animation still happens. So it's up to you if you want to add. All right. Okay, cool. Ooh. All right. All right. So we can get really fancy with these animations. We could have the envelope fall down. We can have the envelope disappear, which what we're going to do is a very simple animation. But if you Google this type of project, you'll see a lot of creative people out there doing really cool animations. But to keep this class simple, I'm going to do a simple animation and just make the envelope disappear. And then when we get to the challenges, we can talk about more complicated animations that you can try. So that's our next step here, is to hide the envelope. So when we click the button, what we're going to do is tag these elements with what's called a class name, so that we can use CSS to hide them. Now that's a little confusing, I know. So I think it might be best if I show you how this is going to work. So I'm gonna hide the button first. Okay. So I'm gonna appear, keeping all my constants together. I'm gonna go find that button. Okay. Button. Okay. So I have my button. And then down here, I'm going to use the button. I'm going to do button, and I'm going to tag that element with a class name. So there's this way of doing this. It's called class list dot add, and I'm going to make up a class name like animate. Again, you can put anything you want here. Okay. So I'll show you what this does. So if I inspect here, right now my button just has one attribute, on-click open me. Now if I click it, it added this class name animate. So it added this, it edited the HTML basically, so that I can then use CSS to do stuff to it. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to you. So now we can go over here and we can change this. Instead of :hover, we can use dot animate, because I use it as a class name and dot is for class names. So I've tagged my button with animate. And I can then use something called opacity to hide it. So opacity 0. Okay. So now I hit the button, opens up, and my button disappears immediately. Yeah, exactly. Changing code after a click. Yep. So then we can just add a transition, just like we did up here, and transition the opacity this time. And I think, what did I do in my notes? 1 second. But if I do this, I'll show you what happens. The button will disappear before the envelope opens up, or while the envelope opens up. So I think it would be better to hide the envelope after we open it up. So there's this other property called transition delay that we can delay the animation for 1 second, time for this animation to finish, or not this animation, the open top animation to finish, and then we hide the envelope. So now if I hit this, oops, that didn't work. Why? Transition delay. Let's try that again. I'm missing something. Did I misspell something? All right. Trying to see what my error is, guys. Transition delay 1 second. Yeah. Opacity 1 second. Okay. All right. Make sure my code was syncing. Yeah, it's there. Okay, I did something wrong, so I don't know what I did. I'm going to see if the browser can tell me what it doesn't like. So I'm going to click here. Yeah, see over here it says it's grayed out. That means the browser doesn't like it. What did I do wrong? It must have overwritten something. I think it overrid something. I think usually when it crosses out, some reason some other property is overriding it. So I'm going to put bang important to let it know this is very important and not hover over it. Let me try that. Yeah, that time it, oh, I see. This transition here, I think, hovered over it. I think that was the problem. Okay. So when I hover over it, it has its own transition here. So this one is breaking this one. So I need to add another style here. So when I hover over this one, when I'm hovering over the button when it's animating, it needs to be displayed. Yeah, now it works. Okay. All right. Sorry, I missed that in my notes. If you're confused by that, don't worry about it. We'll just get the rest of the envelope working. Just know that there is a confusion. The browser's confused about what to do between here and here. So now we just need to put all our other variables into the so top, and then this would be hashtag top. Just have to grab all the other properties. So front, hashtag back, and I think those are the three. So I put $sign for the variable names, hashtag to find them, back, and then I can just you can copy and paste the code in the example too, but you can just, so I'll just add animate to all of these. Okay. And I'm just going to add comma delimited. I'm just going to add each one, hashtag top. Comma delimited means that just separate the selectors by the by a comma. So when a hashtag top is tagged with animate, do this, and when hashtag back dot animate and hashtag front. Come on. All right. Hope I'm not consuming you guys here. All right. So now all my buttons, all my shapes now, when they're tagged with animate, they'll slowly disappear. So if I click here now, everything just disappears. Okay. All right. I think maybe the problem is, guys, is transition looked like it didn't work. I think this has to go over this. I think this was overriding this. That's probably what was happening. Guys. Yeah, there we go. Now it disappears. That was the issue, guys. The issue was that this transition has a delay built in. So if you put this one before this one will override it. So just make sure this is after this, unlike the notes. Okay. So now I have a letter here, but the letter isn't too big. So what we want to do finally, I think this is the last step, is to add these keyframes so that we want, as the envelope, when the envelope is done opening up, we want the letter to pop out of the envelope as it disappears and then get bigger after the envelope disappeared. So there's two stages there. There's this popping up stage, and then there's this getting bigger stage. All right, so what we need to do is the same thing we did with these other shapes. We need to add letter here. Let's just do what we know you need to do. Change this, add letter here. So that we can control this with JavaScript. Okay. And here we can then style our hashtag letter when it's tagged with animate. Okay. But this time we are going to need to define a special animation. We're going to have to define those stages I was talking about. You do that with this keyframes constructor here. So you write this $signs keyframes. It's kind of like defining variables in CSS. So we're creating this keyframes variable. I'm going to call it make big. You can call it whatever you want. It's just a variable kind of thing. Put curly braces here to define what this means. So the first thing is we have 3 stages. So I'm going to say at 0%, at the very first stage, when the animation starts, I'm going to pick something simple right now. I'm just going to change the top and change that to 16 pixels. Then I'm going to wait maybe 1/3 of the time. After 1/3 of the time, I want the top to grow to, what do I have in the notes? Oh, I'm sorry, this was 105 pixels. Don't know what I was looking at. This is a negative 100 pixels. So this is going to be 100 pixels above that orange box we had. So we're going to extend it beyond the envelope element. So I'm going to start at 105 pixels below. And then the top is going to increase up to 100 pixels above the orange box that was there. So it's going to be like way up here. And at 100%, so when the animation's done, the top we want to be at, let's say for this example, 50 pixels. So just so you can see it. Okay. And then in here, we can add a delay again. Well, first of all, let's just define our animation. So instead of using transition, we're going to define animation now. And basically, we want to say use animation defined by make big. Make it last for 2 seconds. And forwards is the same thing like was fixed down here, freeze down here, which means keep everything where it is when the animation's over. And I'm going to make an animation delay of 2 seconds. Okay. All right, so hopefully you can see this happen in 1/3 of 2 seconds. It will grow from, top will go from 105 pixels from that to a negative 100 pixels. And then it will shrink back down to 50 pixels. So let's see what happens. Boop, boop. So you see how it kind of went boop, boop. And if I refresh, so I can add a another stage here, right? I can add like at 75%, or maybe 75%. I can have the top go to negative. I can have it go to negative. No, let's go up to 100. Okay, so this time you can see it go pop, pop, kind of bounce up and down. So if I do this, it will go up, go back down, and go back up. So you can make, just by adding different stages, you can add more stop points of your animation. So to do our animation right, it took Guy and I a lot of experimentation on all these different variables. So I'm just going to copy and paste them from the notes. And just through experimentation, by changing these numbers, we were able to get kind of the animation effect we want. So it does definitely work to do animation, but it's an art. So it takes time and takes precision and takes a good eye. So when you're done, click that, expires, goes up, goes down, voila. And then on my phone, if I refresh it, again, we want to check this on the phone. So here's my envelope. Click it, and yeah, everything looks pretty nice on the phone. So now I could send my my friend a birthday greeting, and by taking the URL, copying it, and sending it on my favorite chat app. So that is that's basically the project. I'll give you guys maybe 2 minutes to play with it, ask questions, and then we'll talk about the challenges.